The other day on stream, I read about a story that's been weighing on my mind ever since. I can't stop thinking about it just because of how ridiculous it is, so I want to share it with all of you. It was a road rage incident in New Zealand. And at this point in my life, I feel like New Zealand is a second home to me because Troy, the other half of the Gentlemen, our music project, lives there. He is a born and raised Kiwi, and I keep up with a lot of New Zealand news. So when I see stories like this, there's like a sense of like disappointment and dread, like, come on, New Zealand, you're better than this. But anyway, in this road rage incident, the driver of a vehicle got very upset at a dog walker, so much so that he grabbed a sword from his car and started trying to carve him up with it, basically. He hit him with like a Mortal Kombat 1 Kinshi fatality. He left him with nearly fatal injuries. It was a miracle that the victim survived thanks to timely intervention from his son. And it's worth noting that the, last samurai here did this with his wife and child in the vehicle, nearly murdered a man in front of them over absolutely nothing. But what makes this story stand out as an affront to God is the fact that the judge ruled that the punishment for the attacker would be 10 months of home detention and 100 hours of community service. He literally said, "Go home, Buster. That's it." No, it's a complete miscarriage of justice here. He gets grounded after nearly murdering a man with a fucking sword. Like, he's been studying the blade, unleashes his forbidden jutsu here, like Demon Slayer shit. He gets out his degenerate breathing techniques, nearly kills this guy in cold blood, and the judge says, "You're grounded." That's crazy to me. He got the same punishment a high school student would if his parents caught him with weed. Like, it blows my mind that he can almost murder somebody with a fucking sword in an act that the judge fully recognizes was madness, cowardly, nearly fatal, and recognizes the severity of it, and then still says, "Just go home." I don't know. The whole thing is baffling, so I just want to share this story with all of you because it is a weird one. You read about the Tesla driver who sliced another driver with a samurai sword in road rage in New Zealand. Man got him with the Bushido arts. Jesus Christ. No, I did not see that. Samurai sword road rage. Man gets home detention for callous and cowardly attack on dog walker. A motorist who... Here, I'll just pull it up on stream. This sounds crazy. A motorist who took a samurai sword to a dog walker in an Auckland road rage incident has been sentenced to home detention. It's not like punishment. Go home. A man was left with chunks of flesh and bone carved out of him after a brutal attack where a driver got out of his car and attacked him with a sword, leaving the pedestrian bleeding in a ditch. The victim, who was walking his dog, survived the attack thanks to his son, who found him and gave him first aid. But the seriousness of the injuries sustained by the victim have left the tradie with lifelong injuries and unable to work. Much to the dismay of the victim's family, Judge Mina Warpuri on Tuesday announced Darren Clark to 10 months home detention, 100 hours of community work, and to pay $5,000 after pleading guilty to causing grievous bodily harm with intent to injure. That's not justice. That's a joke. What in the world? Ruin this guy's life with a samurai sword, and he gets 100 hours of community service and 10 months at home. That's crazy. That's actually insano-style nonsense. Judge Warpuri said the attack was both premeditated and impulsive, but that injuries weren't foreseeable as he had struck him with the scabbard on the blade. Like, just look at what he's saying. In handing down his sentence, Judge Warpuri praised the actions of the victim's son. Without his timely intervention, it is highly likely your victim would have succumbed to blood loss and died from injuries, and yet the person who perpetrated the attack only gets house arrest for 10 months? I want to go over the severity of the attack here, because it's brutal. So let's go ahead and read about exactly what happened and what the effects were, because the victim's life has forever changed. He can now no longer even do the job that he was doing prior to the attack. The victim was 55 at the time of the attack, and he spotted Clark's Tesla approaching. He stood in the middle lane, motioning for the vehicle to slow down, and tapped the Tesla's roof with his palm as Clark steered the vehicle around him. Clark had his wife and young children with him in the car. He stopped the vehicle, grabbed the sheathed samurai sword, which he claimed to keep in the vehicle for protection, which is a wild thing for protection. Usually it's like a baseball bat or something. This man, for some reason, must have watched one anime and said, "That's better than a baseball bat," and then made the switch. But anyway, he gets his sword, he starts swinging the weapon in a downward directional angle, which he described to police as being 50% force. I swear to God, this guy is actually just a weeb. Now he's just making up things. I was only using 50% of my power. He's lucky I didn't go Ultra Instinct plus Ultra on his ass. But it was enough to shatter the sheath on impact and inflict major damage as it sliced through the victim's upper body. He suffered a deep laceration to his neck down to the bone without hitting the spinal cord. The complainant's jaw was broken and his facial muscles and nerves were severed. The sword also cleaved a large chunk of flesh and bone from his left shoulder, which required emergency surgery and skin grafts, and also severed tendons in his left hand. The victim then fell into the ditch on the side of the road and Clark drove away. He tried to call for help but was unable to unlock his phone because of all the blood. He was found minutes later by his son who was driving home. And then it talks about the lasting effects. He still suffers facial drooping, speech impediment, ringing in his ears, and can't fully lift his arm because of the severed tendons, which means he can no longer work the profession he dedicated his adult life to. And that profession was an electrician, from what I've read. So his life has forever changed as a result of this. And the attacker, his life was basically a vacation. He just stays at home for 10 months. Like, that's something people do on purpose, like, for fun. Like, that's just, I don't know, that blows my mind. So apparently the reason they were so light on the sentencing here is because the attacker argued he didn't know that the scabbard broke, and when his wife told him that she had seen a bunch of blood, he panicked, dropped his family off, who was crying and screaming because the young children in his car just witnessed their father go fucking psycho mode. So he claims he dropped them off after realizing the scabbard had broken. He went back to look for the victim, but paramedics and everyone had already shown up, and then he turned himself in. So they're saying that he's expressing deep remorse for what he's done here, and that's why it's so light on sentencing, but I don't think that changes anything. If this guy is fully capable of doing something like this, he's not safe to be around. He's not safe to be in the public like this. For something so small, like having the roof of your Tesla tapped to nearly kill a man over it is ridiculous. Like, I understand the sword was sheathed at the time, but it doesn't take a lot to break that, clearly. And even still, even if it's sheathed, hitting someone with a blunt object, like a sword sheath, is also enough to kill someone as well. But man, they really put a lot of stock into apologies in New Zealand court, it seems, because that was cited here that he wrote like a letter of apology, and man, that must have been the most beautifully written letter of all time, up there with some of Shakespeare's best work, in order to get out of a serious sentence for nearly murdering someone. But yeah, I've been thinking about this story a lot just because I still can't fully process why the sentencing would be so light on something so severe and so mad and brutal. But yeah, I just wanted to share this story with all of you because I've thought about it a lot recently, and that's really about it. So yeah.